So the same question, May 2015. Question of May 2015. May 2015. Question number 2B. That's what we are looking at. And we start with direct labor cost variances. Direct labor cost variances. Direct labor cost variances. Now, this one starts with the total. The total is divided into two. Where we have rates, and then here we have efficiency. Then here we have mix, and here we have yield. That is how the direct labor cost variances look like. We have the mix and the yield, efficiency, rate, and the total. So let's start with the total. Let's start with the total. So the formula is already in your notes, but in short form is labor cost variance is given as standard labor cost minus actual labor cost. Standard labor costs minus actual labor costs. So, Asker, good morning, welcome. Looking at this question, we need to get standard labor unit cost, standard labor unit cost. And standard labor unit costs, looking at our standard up there, you can see Department X was supposed to give us 4,000 and Y was supposed to give us 1,200. And these ones were supposed to be enough for that 2 units. You remember yesterday, we had that 2 units. So based on that, tell me how much that is. Okay, good. Tell me how much that is. Yeah, give me the figure. 162.5. So that is 162.5. Let's get the actual labor costs. actual labor cost. You just add what is there. Down there in number 2, we have 636,000 plus 151,200. Tell me how much that is. What do you get? $787,200. So with that now, our total labor cost variance will be the standard. The standard should be given as 162.5 times the actual units that were produced. The actual units are 3648. 3648. Then you less 787,200. 162.5 times 3648 minus give me that. 194,400. Is it favorable or adverse? Positive or negative? Nur, good morning, and mute yourself. Good. Abdullahi, good morning also. So if it's negative, that is adverse. It means that the actual is more than the standard. All right, let's now compute the rate. Let us compute the rate. Let us compute the rate. And labor rate variance is given as the standard rate minus actual rate, you multiply by actual hours. Standard rate minus actual rate multiplied by actual hours. So there are two departments here. There is department X. Now looking at department X up there, you can see that the rate was 1,000. And the actual rate was 1060. The actual hours that were there were 600. Were 600. So tell me how much that is. that 6,000 adverse. Good. That 6,000 adverse. And then when you come to department Y, we have the rate of 600 minus the actual of 560 at the actual hours of 270. So tell me how much that is. Then 800 favorable. Then 800 favorable. So let's combine these two. Combine these two. This plus this. Tell me what we are going to get. $25,200 advance. The next one is the efficiency. The next one is the efficiency. Efficiency. So labor efficiency variance is standard hours minus actual hours. You multiply by standard rate. Standard hours minus actual hours. You multiply by the standard rate. So starting with Department X, we said when we are talking about the standard hours, we are saying, kiangalia hapo juu, we thought we could use 4 hours. And these 4 hours were supposed to be enough to make that 2 units. The 4 hours were supposed to be enough to make that 2 units. So when you divide, you're able to know 1 unit should have taken as what? Then you multiply by the actual output, which is 3648. So times 3648 minus the actual hours of 600. And the standard rate is 1,000. And the standard rate there is 1,000. So tell me what that is. What that value is 144,000 advance. Let's go to Department Y. Department Y was supposed to take 2 hours, and these were supposed to be enough to make that 2 units. So multiply by that 648, you minus the actual hours, which were 270 at a standard rate of 600. At a standard rate of 600. So tell me that is what? What value is that? 25,200 advance. So if you combine these two, if you combine them, tell me what you get. If you combine the two of them, 169,200 advance. And just like I told you yesterday, if you combine this 169 to this 25, should bring you back here. This 194. This efficiency plus this rate should take you back there. The next that you are supposed to deal with is called mix. And in the mix, we say labor mix variance is given as revised mix minus actual mix, you multiply by the standard rate. Revised mix minus actual mix multiplied by the standard rate. So we have X here. And in getting the mix, I told you, you look at the total. These 4 plus these 2. You tell us X was supposed to bring 4 in a total of 6. X was supposed to bring 4 in a total of 6. So when the actual total was this 600 plus this, which is 870, multiplied by 870, you will be able now to know how many should have come from there. Then you minus the actual mix. The actual mix is they brought 600 at a standard rate of 1,000. At a standard rate of 1,000. So tell me what that is. Tell me what that is. Negative 20,000 advance. Then when we come to Y was supposed to bring 2 out of 6. So multiplied by 870 minus what it brought 270 at 600. At 600. So 2 out of 6 times 870 minus 270, you multiply by 600. That was the rate. Tell me what that is. Yeah, 12,000 favorable. So if you come and combine these two, that obviously will give you 8,000 advance. 8,000 advance. And then with that, we can come and look for the yield. Can come and look for the yield. The yield. Now the yield is labor yield variance is given as standard yield minus actual yield. You multiply by standard labor unit cost. Standard yield minus actual yield. You multiply by standard labor unit cost. Standard labor unit cost. So, in this case, we have what? we have that 2 as the output. We got that 2 units as the output. And this one was after we had input 6 hours. After we had input 6 hours. So that tells you 1 hour is producing how many units? 1 hour is producing how many units? So if that is the case, now that we had an input of 870, so you multiply by 870, that tells you how many we should have gotten. Then you compare with that 648. But 648 multiplied by the standard labor unit costs, 162.5. 162.5. So tell me that is what? Yeah, 161, 200. Now this 161, 200 is adverse, not favorable. And it is adverse because we got fewer units. It's adverse because we got fewer. These ones are more than what we got. So when you get less, the actual, that is adverse. See how you have gotten that. So again, you can see what we said there. That if you get this yield, this one 161, 200. This 161, 200, if you add it to these 8,000, it should bring you back to this 169, 200. It should bring you back there. Okay, so I think that is good enough. If you have any query, the issue of variances, you can raise it. That is labor variances. Okay. So I want us now to proceed to the next, which is the variable overheads. The variable overheads. So we are looking at now the variable overhead cost variances. variable overhead cost variances. So these ones, we again have a structure that talks of total. We have what we call expenditure. And we have what we call efficiency. And then this efficiency is divided into idle, divided into idle and carried out, divided into idle and carried out. Then there is something called variable overhead absorption rate. Now the variable overhead absorption rate is given as budget variable overheads, budget variable overheads. You divide by budget labor hours. Divide by the budget labor hours. Now looking at this question, this question does not have these ones. This question does not have that, so we will have to look for another one. We will have to look for another question that has let us go to December 2014. December 2014. December 2014. Question 5. Yeah. So that means I have to take this question. It is now December 2014. Question number 5. December 2014. Question number 5. I hope you are there. If you are there, if you are there, you can see where they have written budget based on standard cost for an output of 10,000. If you look at that budget and go downwards there, you can see the variable overheads into brackets 30,000 hours at 20. So I want to show you how that 20 has been arrived at, because it's not everywhere. They will have shown you. So you can see the cost for the variable overheads is 600,000. So it is 600,000. You divide by 30,000. So that is how they are arriving at 20 per hour. That's how they're arriving at 20. So after they do that, let's now get the total. The total variable overheads. Total variable overheads. Variance is given as standard variable overheads minus actual variable overheads. You already have that formula with you. So if you want to get the standard, unaenda hapo juu, you can see the standard cost card for product VEM. Standard cost card. When you are there, you can see the variable overheads. They are given at 60. So per unit, it is 60. So you're supposed to take 60, that is per unit, then multiply by the actual units that were produced. So the actual units that were produced, you will get them in information number. If you turn to the other page, number 5, information number 5, hiyo inasema the actual production in sales for the month were 9,000. The actual production in sales for the month were 9,000. So if you multiply by 9,000, that will give you the standard. Sorry, I don't know why I got this L. It should have been standard variable overheads. Standard variable overheads minus actual variable overheads. So you go now to the actual statement. You can see the one that we are given on the other side, information 3, the actual results. The actual results. When you look at the actual results, you can see the actual variable overheads down there. They are 520. They are 520,000. So give me that value. You see 60 times 9,000. Tell me how much that will be. What's the difference? The difference there is how much? Yeah, 520 tumeitoa kwa the actual results. Information number 3, Abdurrahim. Information number 3, you can see it down there. So we have 20,000. And this 20,000 is favorable. It's favorable. It's favorable. Let's compute the expenditure. Let's compute the expenditure. Now, the expenditure, variable overheads, expenditure variance, variable overheads, expenditure variance is given as the actual labor hours multiplied by variable overhead absorption rate, you minus the actual variable overheads. You minus actual variable overheads. So the actual labor hours, if you look at equation information number 3, you can see again just where I told you to look for overheads. You can see direct labor hours. The actual, they were 28,500. The actual labor hours, they are 28,500. You multiply by VOAR, which is already given in the standard card. You see, when you look at the standard card, you can see variable overhead, 3 hours at 20. 3 hours at 20. Now, it is the same thing that is also provided in the budget. If you look at the budget down there, where we have the variable overhead, you can see it is 30,000 hours at 20 per hour. Now here 20, you're here, but I showed you how to compute. So with that, we multiply by 20. Then we minus the actual variable overheads, which we have said they are 520,000. 520,000. So tell me how much that is. How much that is? It's 50,000 favorable. Good. From there, we proceed and get to compute the efficiency. Now, in the efficiency, variable overheads efficiency variance. Variable overheads efficiency variance is standard hours minus actual hours. You multiply by variable overhead absorption rates. You multiply by variable overhead absorption rates. So how do you get the standard hours? We have been saying you get the hours that were supposed to be spent on one unit, and these are 3 hours. So it is 3 multiplied by the actual output. The actual output was 9,000. Then you minus the actual labor hours. The actual labor hours are 28,500. You multiply by the OER of 20. So tell me what that is. That gives us what? 30,000 advance. Good. Now with 30,000 advance, you can see now what you have been saying. This efficiency plus the expenditure should be equal to total. So this 30,000 advance plus this 50,000 favorable should be equal to this one, 20,000 favorable. Should be equal to 20,000 favorable. Now the question at hand does not provide for us the data required to compute these two. So because you have the formula, just take note of the formulas in case you come across a question that has that data, you simply apply the formula like we have applied. Now, from there, let's proceed on and look at fixed overheads, expenditure of, or rather fixed overheads, cost variances, fixed overheads, cost variances. Now, the fixed overhead cost variances is also further broken into expenditure. And then we have the volume. And then volume is broken into capacity. And then we have efficiency. We have efficiency. So that is how the fixed overheads look like. So I want to believe you are through with that. So when you're dealing with fixed overheads, there are two things that you need to be able to compute. One is called fixed overhead absorption rate. And fixed overhead absorption rate is given as budget fixed overheads. Budget fixed overheads, you divide by budget labor hours. Budget fixed overheads, you divide by budget labor hours. Now, looking at the question at hand, you can see additional information. In the additional information, we are told that the budget fixed overheads, the annual budget fixed overheads were 14,400,000 and are assumed to be incurred evenly throughout the year. So you are supposed to take these 14,400,000 First of all, you divide by 12 because you can see that this budget is monthly. If you look at up there, you can see in the month of September. So this budget is for the month, and we are told it is incurred evenly. So you divide by 12 there. You do the 1 month. For 1 month, it is how much? Then budget labor hours, as you can see in the budget up there, we have 30,000. We have 30,000. So if you do so, first of all, you get 14,400,000. You divide by 12. That's giving us 1,200,000. That 1 million divide by 30,000. And what are you getting? $40. Good. So now the other thing that you need to be able to get is called budget fixed overheads per unit. All these things are in your notes. Budget fixed overheads per unit. It is given as budget fixed overheads. Budget fixed overheads, you divide by budget output units. Budget fixed overheads, you divide by budget output units. And you can see this is 1,200,000. And the output, this budget was for 10,000. So this gives you 120. This budget was for 10,000 units. This budget was for 10,000 units. So now from there, we get the total. We get the total. So total fixed overheads variance is given as standard fixed overheads minus actual fixed overheads. That's the formula of getting the fixed overheads. So the standard, as you have been saying, you always get per unit according to the budget. This one, 120. Then you multiply by the actual output, which we have been saying is 9,000. You multiply by the actual output, which we have been saying so the actual fixed overheads, ukiangalia kwa hii fixed, kwa hii actual results, you get it is 1,160,000. 1,160,000. So when you compute tell me how much that turns out to be. $80,000 advance. Good. 80,000 advance. All right, let's come and compute the expenditure. Let us compute the expenditure. Now, the fixed overheads expenditure variance. The fixed overheads expenditure variance is given as budget fixed overheads minus actual fixed overheads. Budget fixed overheads minus actual fixed overheads. So the budget, as you again can be able to see, is 1,200,000, and the actual is 1,160,000. The budget is 1.2. So that obviously is 40,000. And this is favorable. 40,000 favorable because we spent less. Spent less. Then we come to volume. Volume, we have fixed overheads volume variance. The fixed overheads volume variance is given as budget output units minus actual output units. Budget output units minus actual output units. You multiply by budget fixed overheads per unit. Budget fixed overheads per unit. So the budget output was 10,000, and the actual output turned to be 9,000. And this one is 120. So straight on, that must be 120,000. And this 120,000 is adverse. Is adverse because we produced fewer units. Is adverse because we produced fewer units when the fixed cost was remaining constant. So that was not good. The next one is called capacity. Capacity variance. Now in the capacity, we say fixed overheads capacity variance. Fixed overheads capacity variance is given as budget labor hours minus actual labor hours. Budget labor hours minus actual labor hours. You multiply by fixed overhead absorption rates. Budget labor hours minus actual labor hours, you multiply by fixed overhead absorption rate. So the budget labor hours were, as you can see up there, they were 30,000. And the actual turned out to be 28,500. And the OER is 40. The OER is 40. The OER is 40. So now with that, tell me how much that is. as a variance. $60,000. Now this one is adverse. Is adverse. And why it's adverse is because we ended up working fewer hours. We ended up working fewer hours than what we should have worked for. And remember, this is a fixed cost, not a variable cost. So why we are saying is adverse is that you still end up paying the full cost. It's like you come to this class and you already have paid your fee and it was supposed to be 2 hours. The budget was 2 hours, but I teach you for 30 minutes. You go home complaining or you leave the class complaining because the actual is less and already you have paid for the 2 hours. So you are not paying per hour. At sasa useme, now that you have taught me for 30 minutes, I'm only paying you for 30 minutes. No. The pay is made in advance, or you agree to pay in advance, and you are paying for 2 hours. But the actual turns out to be less. So in that case, it is adverse. It's not favorable to the person who is paying. And remember, our argument is in the perspective of the company as the one paying. Then on the other side, we have the efficiency. Efficiency, I hope you have understood that. On the efficiency, fixed overheads efficiency variance is given as standard hours minus, or standard labor hours minus actual labor hours, standard labor hours minus actual labor hours, you multiply by fixed overhead absorption rates. Standard labor hours minus actual labor hours, you multiply by fixed overhead absorption rates. Now, in this case, our standard, we had already argued that, tukasema, it is 3 per unit, and our actual output is 9,000. It's 9,000. The actual labor hours, they are 28,500. And the OER is 40. This is also 60,000 and as well advance. And that's why I told you that if you rely on the mathematical side, you will miss some things. You see, this is positive, but we are calling it adverse. This is negative. We are still calling it adverse. So it's not about the sign. It's about what is it you are comparing. So here, according to our efficiency, we should have just taken 27,000 hours. But we ended up taking 28. So that means we did not work well. There was idling around. So this is adverse. And once again, trying to reconcile what I've been telling you, ukichukua these 60 adverse plus these 60 adverse, the capacity and the efficiency, these two, you add them, they should take you back to volume. So this 60 plus this 60 should bring you here, 120,000. And then if you take this volume, you add to the expenditure, they should take you back to total. So this 120 here, adverse, plus this 40 favorable, it should bring you to 80,000 adverse. 80,000 adverse. So I hope you have gotten that. Good. Let's proceed on to the next set of variances. So let's look at sales variances. In the sales variances, we have what we call price. We have what we call the price and what we call volume. And then this volume is further broken into two. It's further broken into two. There is what we call mix and what we call quantity. And this quantity is further broken into two. There is what we call market share. And what we call market size. Already you have this structure with you. So with that, we start with the total. We start with the total. So the total sales variance is given as a budget contribution minus actual contribution. Budget contribution minus actual contribution. So if you look at our budget, if you look at our budget, you can see the budget contribution was 2 million. The budget contribution was 2 million. And if you look at the actual results, we had 1,340,000. 1,340,000. So that gives us a difference of how much? That gives us the difference is 660,000. And this is adverse. It's adverse because we got something less. We thought we could make a contribution of 2 million, but we only made 1.3. So that is poor. Then the price. The price, sales price variance, is given as budget selling price minus actual selling price. Budget selling price minus, no, let me not use that formula for now. Because we will use it in the reconciliation. We talk of standard contribution margin minus actual contribution margin. You multiply by actual sales units. Actual sales units. So the standard contribution margin is already provided up there. If you look at our data as 200. But the actual, you will have to compute it as 1,340,000. And this one was brought about by 9,000 units. That gives you the actual. Then you multiply by the actual sales units, which are 9,000. Which are 9,000. So work that out and tell me what it is. $460,000, good. Now, these 460,000, it is also advanced. It is advanced because we should have gotten more. We should have gotten 200, but this one was less, something less. Haya, hiyo ingine inaitwa volume. Volume. So sales volume variance is given as budget sales units minus actual sales units. You multiply by standard contribution margin. And maybe before I forget, this formula here is not the one. There is another one that we shall use during reconciliation. And if you look at your notes that I gave you, again, you can see the difference, or the two are explained well, which one you use for operations and which one you use for reconciliation. So the budget was 10,000 and the actual was 9,000. Standard contribution margin is 200. And this gives us 200,000. And also this one is adverse. It's adverse because we sold fewer units. Is adverse because we sold fewer units. So again, you can see this 200 plus this 400 gives you this 60. It gives you 60. So the question at hand does not give us different products that can help us compute these others. So these ones you're not going to compute because the questions at hand here cannot. So in the formulas are well provided. So in case you come across any, you should be able to navigate. So that is the set of the variances, the 5 of them. Tulianza na material, kuja labor, kuja variable overheads, kuja fixed overheads, kumalizia na sales. Now from there, you are supposed to draw something we call a reconciliation statement. You're supposed to draw something we call a reconciliation statement. Reconciliation. Now, this one, you can divide it like this. We have a column where we show the details of what is it we are dealing with. We have a column where you show the formula. You have a formula where you show the workings. And you have a column where you show the amount. Where you show the amount. So if you look at your notes, once again, looking at your notes, you can see the format of the reconciliation statement. So we always start with the budget profit. Budget profit. And the budget profit is given as the budget revenue minus budget costs. Budget revenue minus budget cost. So looking at this question that we are still dealing with, because they had asked for the reconciliation, they were not even asking what you were doing earlier. Looking at the budget revenue, the budget revenue is 8,800,000. And the costs, all those costs, if you add them, they are coming to 8 million. That's why we are left with a profit of 800,000. The budget profit. I hope you can see the budget profit of 800,000 in the budget. Then you bring the variance. The variances. So if you follow the format I gave you, the variances, we start with the sales price. We start with the sales price. Now, sales price, I've told you when you're doing reconciliation, you say it is the budget selling price minus actual selling price. You multiply by actual sales units. Budget selling price minus actual selling price multiplied by actual sales units. So looking at this question, you can see up there, the budget selling price was 880. But ukiteremuka hapo chini kwa actual, you can see they sold each unit at 900. And they sold 9,000. Now that difference, 20 times 9,000 is 180 negative. But when you are here, you do not bring the negative signs, as I told you. Because finally, because we shall add, if you joke around with those signs, they can easily confuse you. So this one, because the actual price was more, we are going to have it as favorable. So it is 180,000, which is favorable. 180,000, which is favorable. All right, let's go to sales volume. Sales volume. So sales volume is given as budget sales units minus actual sales unit. Budget sales units minus actual sales units. You multiply by standard contribution margin. Standard contribution margin. So this one we had computed earlier. Tukasema it was 10,000 less 9,000. And the contribution margin we know is 200. And this is giving us 200,000, which is advanced. 200,000, which is advanced, because we sold fewer units. because we sold fewer units. Higher. The next thing now that we bring is material cost variance. Material cost variance. And that is the total material cost. So this one, tulisema, is given as standard material costs minus actual material costs. Standard material cost minus actual material cost. Now you can see here we have two types of materials. We have two types of materials. So you can either combine or you work it on its own. So starting with the first one, starting with the first one, material A. Ukiangalia hapo juu kwa standard. When you look at the standard, you can see material A was supposed to cost us 200 shillings. So you multiply by the 9,000 units that were produced. The 9,000 units that were produced. And then you go to down there where you can see the actual material cost for A as 2,090,000. 2,090,000. Tell me the difference. The difference is how much? The difference is how much? $290,000 and is adverse. And remember, I've told you, you don't bring the negative sign, just put it that way. Then for the second material, ukiangalia huko juu kwa standard card, you can see that one unit was supposed to take us 150. So you multiply by the actual production of 9,000. 150 multiplied by 9,000. And then, ukiangalia kwa the actual results, you find it is 1,414,000. 1,414,000. So we have 150 times 9,000 minus 14,000. So tell me how much that is. So that is the 64,000 advance. 64,000 advance. 64,000, which is advance. That is material cost. Let's go to labor costs. Let us go to labor costs. So labor costs, the same argument, that it is the standard labor cost minus actual labor costs. Standard labor costs minus actual labor costs. And again, ukikimbia hapo juu kwa standard card, when you go to the standard card up there, you'll be able to see that each unit should have taken us 270. So multiply by 9,000. 270 multiplied by 9,000. Abdullahi, you will check yours. The correct figure is 64,000. Check your working, please. So 270 times 9,000. Alafu ukibia hapo chini where we have direct labor costs. And you find is 2,736,000. 2,736,000. Dry, have you confirmed? So if you say 270 times 9,000 minus 27,36,000, you get what? What do you get there? You get 306,000. Good. 306,000, and this is still advanced. Still advanced. 306,000. Then when we come to variable overheads, we take the standard variable overheads minus actual variable overheads. So this one, the standard, as you can see up there, it is what? It is 60 per unit. So 60 times 9,000. And then you go down there and find that the variable overheads, actual, they were 520,000. 520,000. So I think this one we had computed to Kasema 60 times 9,000 minus 520,000. We got 20,000, which is favorable. 20,000, which is favorable. Haya, tukikuja kwa fixed overheads. Fixed overheads, we only look at the expenditure. For the fixed overheads, we look at the expenditure, which we said is budget fixed overheads minus actual fixed overheads. Budget fixed overheads minus actual fixed overheads. So the budget, we already know it is 1,200,000. And the actual, we already know it is 1,160,000. So that gives us a difference of 40,000. A difference of 40,000, which is favorable. And then we have the volume. Now volume, we know is given as budget output units minus actual output units multiplied by budget fixed overheads per unit. But this one, you only work it only when we have stocks. So no closing stock or no stocks. Or let me put it this way. Compute only when stocks exist. So, lakini kwa examiner, you don't write that. Ukiona hakuna stock, so you don't put it. But I'm just put it that way because you may come across a question that has stocks. So with that, now you get the actual profit. The actual profit. The actual profit is actual revenue minus actual costs. Actual revenue minus actual costs. So looking at the actual results, you can see we had 8,100,000 as the revenue. And the costs, if you just subtract, it should be 7,920,000. So that they are giving us the profit that you can see there, 180. That is the end of the reconciliation statement. So in this reconciliation statement, what you do, you get the budget profit, you add the favorable variances, you less the advanced variances to get the actual profit. The budget profit, you add the favorables, you less the adverse. So chukua calculator uanzie hapa. You add the favorables, you less the advances, check whether they bring you here. Tell me whether they are reconciling.
Look, wala.
Okay, so if they have reconciled, then that is good. That's good. I would like you to do, or what I would like you to do is this. Just get this format the way it is. Anytime you see a question on reconciliation, this is the way it should be. And this is what the examiner does there for the candidate to get the 20 marks. So anytime you see a question on reconciliation, that is how it should be. All these variances we have computed, so we don't need to go back. Just get the format and then compute. So to cement your understanding on that, you can try the question of June 2013, question 2B. June 2013, question 2B. So look at that question. We pange in the same way. You arrange it in the same way that we have with that. Good. Now, after you have reconciled, the next thing that you're supposed to do is now to do the investigation. Is to do the investigation of variances. Is to do the investigation of variances. And as you can see, variance investigation is aimed at discovering the reason as to why actual performance differs from the standard performance. There are various reasons, but they are classified into four. One is we could have had what we call measurement errors. Measurement errors. That means whoever went to gather data did not get it right. Then the other one is out of date standards. Maybe we are using standards that are out of control. Out of control. Just a minute. Yeah, maybe we are using values that are out of the standards that are out of control. You see these standards, maybe they were designed a long period of time and they have already been overtaken by events. The other thing is out of control operations. Our business is not moving the way it should be, and we still continue running it. Then we have what we call random or uncontrollable factors. These are factors that are beyond control. These are factors that are beyond control of the business. Now, variance investigation is done in three ways. One, there is what we call a simple rule of thumb. There is what we call the statistical models, and there is what we call the statistical division. Statistical division. Now, a perfect investigation model should only investigate those variances which result into higher benefits than the cost that is used. So anytime you want to embark on investigation, you should look at the costs that are involved. And if the costs are more than benefits, you should not proceed, and the opposite. Now, the first method is called simple rule of thumb. And this is where you just do arbitro. Arbitro means there is no guiding criteria. You just come up with your own figures and you decide what will be the mean, what will be the upper limit and the lower limit. And you are given an example here that if the standard usage for particular material is 10 kg and the actual output was 1,000 units, then variance will not be investigated. If the actual usage was between 9,000, it should have been 9,000 and 11,000 kgs. Yeah, so that means we have given ourselves an interval of between 9,000 and 11,000. Between 9,000 and Now, the advantages of this is that it is simple to use. It is also very easy to implement. Simple to use and also easy to implement. Those are the advantages. But the disadvantages are the method does not take into account statistical significance of the reported variances. So we are not able to look at how significant they are. And then it does not consider the costs and the benefits of the investigation. Does not consider the costs and the benefits of the investigation. Now, the second method is called statistical quality control charts. And these are models that compute the probability that a given variance comes from an in-control distribution, but does not take into account the costs and the benefits of the investigation. Yeah. So the method is based on two main assumptions, which are mutually exclusive. One, that the system is in control and the variance is due to random fluctuations around the expected outcome. What that means is that our system is in control, and any variance that we have noted came as a result of a factor that is beyond our control. The other thing is that the system is somehow out of control, but if it is still out of control, there is some remedy. There is something we can do and change that circumstance. Now, once the probabilities are established, we draw statistical control charts. And these charts, they show what we call the tolerance limit. And I think in our next lesson, we will be showing how to draw this chart. We'll be showing how to draw the chart. It is done like this, it looks like this, but we will draw. Okay, then the last method is called statistical decision model. This is like decision making. And this takes into account the costs and the benefits of an investigation. And it assumes that the two are mutually exclusive, or it assumes two mutually exclusive states that we mentioned earlier, that the system is in control and any variance noted is as a result of a random fluctuation, and then that the system is in some way out of control and a corrective action can be taken to remedy the situation. So we are told that if the process is out of control, there is a benefit called B associated with returning the process to its in control state. Now the benefit represents the cost saving that will arise when you bring back the system by avoiding the variances that could be there in future. So when you bring it back, we have the benefits. And then we have a cost. We have a cost. We have a cost of C that will be incurred. Remember we said earlier, you consider the costs. You consider the costs. You consider the cost of the investigation and the benefits. Now, once you have done that, the derivation process is as follows. You read C to be the cost of investigation, B to be the benefits, and P to be the probability that the system is out of control. And then the decision rule is to investigate if, that's what I've been saying, that the expected benefits are more than expected costs. That is when you investigate. And these are the formulas that we use. That is what we shall do in our next lesson. That is what we shall do in our next lesson. So what you're going to do, as we try again to beat time, if you are able to join us tomorrow in the evening, you can join as I teach the evening class. If you are not, immediately I'm done with them, I'll send the link so that you can follow the continuation of this one, so that when we meet on Thursday, God willing, we shall pick from where I'll have stopped tomorrow. Yeah, so if you're able to join tomorrow in the evening from 6, you can join using the very same link, you can join. If you're not, I'll send the link. You will follow. So for now, we call it a lesson at that point. Thank you. Good day.